Hello, welcome to the James Cooley Show. It's your life, and I tell you, wow, we got an absolutely fantastic show today because I believe that the topic that we're going to discuss, we all need to have an understanding what diversity, equity, inclusion is and what it's all about. And many times that in the workplace or either just in society or home as a whole, we don't understand what that means. We just think those are some alphabets, DEI. We just think that's what that is, and not really knowing the impact that I have on a company, an organization, a family, etc. And so, before I even get started, I got to always bring on my executive producer and co-host who always make great shows like this happen. How you doing, Dr. Michelle Denise Coley? How you doing today?
I'm doing good. You love saying my middle name, Denise, don't you? My grandmother's the only person who called me by my middle name, Denise.
So I know whenever I want to get your attention, all I have to do is say, Denise.
It's like, growing up, my family calls me Shell. No one calls me Michelle. But if they say the full Michelle, then I know I'm in trouble. So,
Wow.
Yeah, this is going to be a really interesting show today. Very educational. We've talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion on the show before, but there's just so much to it. You can't really address everything in an hour show. It is a huge topic. It is a huge, I would say, planning, organizing, and entering this into the organizations, into all companies. But we have the expert on the show today, and she's been a frequent guest on our show, so she's going to educate us more a little bit about DEI.
I think it's a real big deal, and our organizations are now understanding how big of a deal it is, and they are trying to get their people educated and give them an understanding of how this is going to help increase productivity in everything that you do. So, Michelle, I'm excited about this guest, and wherever you're watching today, if you're watching the show on E360 TV, if you're watching on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, over 25 plus other live streaming network, welcome to the show. And if you want to be part of the show, all you have to do is go to the questions, ask any questions that you want to. This great guest that Michelle is getting ready to introduce, and join in on the topic because this is extremely important. So, Michelle, can you introduce the title of the show, the purpose of the show, and also introduce this great guest?
Yes, so the title of the show is Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, DEI, and we're getting to know the background of entrepreneur, change management expert, and diversity, equity, inclusion leader, Rachel Rudo Munyaradzi. And we're talking about what DEI actually entails. And she's going to provide some examples as well, and how companies and organizations are responding to DEI and why there are some resistance to DEI as well. We're going to discuss, what unconscious biases are and also microaggressions. So let's talk about this guest today. She has been on the show before, but let's reintroduce her. Rachel Rudo Munyaradzi is a change management expert, seamlessly engineering transformational changes, working with C-suite executives in companies and nonprofits, dedicating more than 2 decades to helping executives and teams transform their challenges into opportunities for extraordinary growth and performance. Primarily focused on bringing companies from chaos to clarity, Rachel believes that change is inevitable and thriving is a choice. Rachel believes that she's always been a minority throughout her career in corporate America, and she's a diversity and inclusion thought leader. As a Black woman originally from Zimbabwe, she refused to let her gender, race, or place of birth determine her career path. She advocates for diversity and inclusion within the organization's culture to allow employees to feel like they belong and to bring their best selves to work. And there's many more to know about this wonderful woman, this wonderful guest. So here we go, audience. Welcome back to the show, Rachel Rudo Munyaradzi.
How you doing, Rachel?
Hi, Michelle. Hi, JC. How are you today?
I'm doing just fine. It's always a pleasure having you on the show, radio show, or whatever show that we're on, because You seem to enlighten everybody with that smile is one thing, but also the understanding of this great topic that we're going to talk about today. So Rachel, can you, for the people that haven't heard you on the show before, can you tell them a little bit about you, where you grew up, and just tell them a little bit about Rachel.
Yes, absolutely. So my name is Rachel, and I was born in Zimbabwe, came to America for school, and pretty much never left. And my entire work life has been here in the United States of America. Of course, I was taught that education opened up doors for you, and education did open up doors for me. I went to school, did business administration, started off working in an IT company in Columbus, Ohio, because I went to school in Columbus, Ohio. Started off in market research and pretty much have worked my way up. Moved to Atlanta. Now I'm in California and just going from level to level, learning and growing within corporate America. And
Wow.
ended up in the C suite and then had a midlife crisis, pivoted and started my own consulting company that focused on strategic planning and diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging.
Wow. So, you're a thought leader. Can you please explain to our viewers and our listeners exactly what uh, diversity, equity, inclusion, what's entailed in that?
Absolutely. So, diversity is the point at which things differ, right? I'm a woman, you're a man. That's a difference, race, gender, religion. So, diversity is anything where things differ: race, ethnicity, gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, age. In today's world in corporate America, we have lots of different ages within. We have from baby boomers down to millennials. So lots of different people working all within one company, for example. Physical ability, um, ethical values, national origin, political beliefs, all that is diversity. Inclusion is the ability of an organization, a school, a nonprofit to be able to have everybody coexist in a way where everybody feels like they belong and that the differences are not highlighted. And equity is treating everybody fairly. Verne Myers always talks about this in a way that I think explains it very, very well. She is the chief diversity officer of Netflix. And also, she has her own DEI firm. And she talks about how diversity is being invited to the party, right? Because in some instances, not everybody was invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance.
Wow. So you are so passionate. You've been doing this for quite some time. Why are you so passionate about discussing diversity, equity, inclusion, and how did all the different things that I know about you that you do? Uh, what is different about this topic than a lot of other things that you teach?
So, why am I passionate about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging? I
Yeah.
think for me, I'm passionate about it because I was always taught you could be, do, and have whatever you wanted. And I focused on what I wanted and went for it and didn't necessarily look at the obstacles that were in place for me, right? As a woman, as an immigrant woman from Africa working in America, I didn't focus on those things, but there were barriers, right? And I'm passionate about it. And I'll give you a little example. When I started working in corporate America, we were always told to have our hair straight, right? We had to look as have our hair as straight as possible. So you would never go for a job interview with braids, for example. And so we were conforming to what was considered professional in order to get a job. So I'm passionate about this work because most recently here in California, the Crown Act was passed, and that says that my hair does not grow from its root straight. So I'm putting chemicals in my hair to make it straight. I should be able to show up at any place, at a school, at my church, at a job interview with my natural hair. I shouldn't be trying to conform to a dominant culture or to what's considered professional. So I'm passionate about that because I don't want for the generations to come to have to be something that they're not. I can't change how my hair grows, right? From its root. That's just how it is. So I'm passionate about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging because I feel that people should be able to bring their best selves, their whole selves, their authentic selves to any situation and be accepted and be given a fair chance. So that's why I'm passionate about DEI.
Oh, yeah. So DEI, as you know, is a major hot topic in today's time. Used to didn't be. It's a major hot topic in most companies and most organizations. Why you think that buzz just now, when we've been talking about this years and years, and it's just now clicking in? What are your thoughts on that?
It was always there, and sometimes maybe called things like culturalism, multiculturalism. But I would say the murder of George Floyd on national television when everybody was at home, not able to do anything. And when I say everybody was at home, I mean the entire world. The world shut down, right? And everybody was at home and everybody was watching TV and everyone watched George Floyd be murdered. And that was wrong. It was racial and it woke everyone up. And that, for me, when it comes to corporate America, showed the change when people were now beginning to talk about it. People were beginning to ask organizations where they stood when it came to certain issues, race issues, LGBTQ plus issues. So DEI has become such a buzzword, I think, honestly, because of George Floyd. And I remember my mom was actually in Zimbabwe at the time, and she's never gotten over it. She watched it and she wept. Her thing was the way he was killed. It was just so heartless. And then people couldn't turn away from the inequities that exist in our world.
I believe that you're absolutely right. That was the trigger point, and I believe most people's lives that this need to be discussed. Everybody should be given a fair chance, regardless of what they are, what religion they are, and that's a turning point right now, and it's being recognized. And we still have to get buy-in from all of the major organizations to bring folks in to teach their organization, their people, from top down, not just bottom up. But we're going to take a station break. But when we come back, we're going to pick it up with Rachel again. If you want to be part of the conversation, just go to the comments. Ask Rachel any question you want to, or ask myself, or just say hello. Become part of the conversation. It's Your Life. I'm Dr. James J.C. Cooley. We'll be back shortly after the break.
I never wanna leave. Yeah, I'm right where I wanna be. We got something you and me, and I can't get rid of this feeling. Just like a magnet, we're just like a magnet. The things we have can't be taken for granted. Now I know that it has always been you. I can't help it, I'm so drawn to you. Just like a magnet, we're just like a magnet. The things we have can't be taken for granted. Now I know that it has always been you. I can't help it, I'm so drawn to you. Hey, I'm so drawn to you. I'm so drawn to you.
Really get a chance to know who you are. And once you know who you are, you truly know who you are, Love who you are. Love who you are. You're a masterpiece. Love who you are. Love who you were born to be. Love me some me. That's what I'm talking about. When you leave high school, you gotta know today or tomorrow, hopefully today, what your plans are. Hopefully, there is no bad decision unless there is no plan. Create, collaborate, commit with confidence. Commit with what? Commit with what? In everything that you do.
Hello, welcome back to the James Cooley Show. It's your life, and we got Rachel here, and I tell you, just like I mentioned at the beginning, it's always an absolute pleasure having her on my show because she educates us on a lot of different things. But today we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that's just like she mentioned that it's a buzzword. Used to be one, but yeah, it seemed like a lot of organizations is stepping up to the plate and they're taking it seriously, which it should have always been that way. And I want to pick it up, but I tell you, if you want to be part of the conversation, just go to the comments and ask Rachel any question that you want to, and I'm sure she's gonna get you an answer. So Rachel, we was talking about this top down, not just bottom up. Why do you think it's so difficult for CEOs, a lot of CEOs and presidents of companies, to just push this issue to the side until a major incident happened in their company and they're getting sued or all type of complaints? Why is it so difficult for organizations to want to spend money on this type of training?
A lot of it is ignorance and fear of the unknown and fear of change. And also believing false stereotypes. So, fear of change. If we look at major organizations in the United States, a lot of the CEOs are all predominantly white, right? So what does change things when a person, I had a session yesterday where we were talking about racial inequity in the United States, right? Or in the world. When you think of a Black person and you think of a good Black person, who do you think of? A lot of times you think of the Michael Jordans, Kobe Bryants, right? They're all athletes. Those are the good Black people. And when you think of not so good Black people, you're thinking words like thugs and things like that. So a lot of it is ignorance, right? It goes back to the history in America, or even in Zimbabwe, the history of the white dominant culture dominating over other cultures. And it's not just Black cultures, but other cultures. So it's just fear of change, not fully understanding that diversity, equity, and inclusion applies to everyone. It's not a form of affirmative action where we give people who are not qualified roles because of the color of their skin or because of their gender. It is something that gives everyone an equal playing field.
Yeah, so we talk about that, but we also know that right now in society, we got to conform. That's what a lot of companies, presidents, and we just have to just meet the criteria. We have to make sure that if our hiring practices that we have to have so many females, so many Blacks, so many this, so many that. Do you think that this stereotype or whatever that might ever go away, or it's just a fad right now. To make sure that I got people in my company, not necessarily because I want them, but I have to. Can you talk about that a little bit? And that's a touchy topic, by the way. Most people don't want to hear it, but it's true.
I absolutely think that change is coming. And I think change is coming because of many things that are happening in our world today. Like I said, when George Floyd was murdered, my mom was in Zimbabwe. It was during COVID. She was stuck in Zimbabwe and couldn't come here. But she was able to see everything. So, media, social media, the younger generations, they're the ones who are pushing for change. When I look at myself, and James, I have a relationship with Desi.
Mhm.
We have, reverse mentoring, mentor-mentee relationship. She's younger than me. I learned so much from her. I tolerated certain things within the workplace that Desi would never tolerate. She would rather walk away from a job than to just have a job for the sake of having a job and be ill-treated. So my response is yes, change is coming. And even those organizations that didn't want change, there was pressure from outside the organization that made them pivot and change. So if it's the shareholders, if it's social media, right? Everybody now has a platform. People are speaking up. So change is inevitable. Thriving is a choice. You could be that CEO who refuses to have change, but if it becomes public, if people start speaking negatively about your company, ultimately it'll affect your bottom line. If you're a public company, it could affect stock prices. There's so many things that would not make it a good choice for an organization to not embrace change and go with the times. So there's a lot of learning and unlearning that people have to do. I even, as a Black woman, have to unlearn certain behaviors that I just accepted as the norm. But the younger generations, they're not standing for that.
I believe that mindset is so important. And just like you just said, a lot of times we have a mindset that's, I believe, that's on the past. And it's like, oh no, this is not how we used to do it. This is not, I'm never going to do it that way. I'm always going to do it the way that we've been doing. Uh, I believe that in generation changes, which is going to happen every 20 years, you're going to have a new generation with different ideas, different thoughts, and they're going to be the future leaders of tomorrow. And many of the people that in these positions right now, um, they're gonna have to learn the hard way.
Right.
So what are some of the greatest?
JC, sorry, I just wanted to say let's talk about that, and talking about George Floyd, for example.
Mhm.
I remember when the verdict came for his murder, I wept. I didn't realize how emotional I would be. I wept. But if you rewind and you go back to 50 years ago, or even 20 years ago, we now have social media. There were people who were recording what happened. We were all able to watch what happened. Nobody could deny what happened. How many Black men have been murdered? And you kind of hear about it 2-3 weeks later, but there isn't the evidence. So we're in a time right now where, with all the technology that we have, you have to pivot, you have to change. Justice is now being served because of technology and people speaking up. So you can be that person who's stuck in the old way of thinking, but you're not going to prosper in today's world.
It's going to be a challenge. And Rachel, what do you think the most, the greatest challenge to people that are stuck in the mindset they're not going to change? That's my CEOs and companies. What would be their greatest challenge before? And my grandma and all of you said, "Hey, you fall down enough time, it's going to create a soft butt." So, uh, so what is the greatest challenge for people that are totally resistant of this?
It's the othering. It's looking at DEI be as, oh, that's for them. If you're a man, if you're saying, oh, that's that movement for women who want to have jobs, it's just that othering. If you are an educated Black woman, it's like, oh, those people who don't have education. So it's the othering. That's the biggest resistance to DEI. And when people realize that diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, the inclusion part, affects every single person. So you might think, JC, that everything is great for you right now and you have no need to be a part of this movement, as people are calling it, but anything could happen. Anything could happen tomorrow, where we might need to consider your circumstances in a different way for you to be able to continue to do the job that you're doing right now,
Okay. Do you have any examples yourself? Because I know you was in corporate for quite some time, where you experienced leadership that was totally against change, or they had all type of biases. Any examples that might have affected you?
Yes, absolutely. My favorite example is the CEO who had to meet with me, kicking and screaming, was very upset. He wanted nothing to do with DEI. And he said, because he felt it was, he didn't want it to look like he was picking a side, right? And he felt DEI was very politicized. It was something he wanted nothing to do with. And he was with me, but didn't want to be with me at all. Is there anything else we can do to call it something else? But no. So I didn't quite know how to deal with him. So I thought education was the best way to go. So I began to read a book with him that explained what DEI was. And from our one-on-one sessions, I found out that his wife was actually losing her eyesight. Very, very bright woman. I think she used to be a professor, but she was losing her eyesight and couldn't work anymore, right? And he had made all these accommodations at home. She had now started working for him, but he made accommodations at home for her to be able to help him in his business, but everything was at home. And I explained to him that diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging would be where an organization would make those same accommodations that he had made for his wife in the workplace, because her losing her eyesight was something beyond her control, but it didn't affect her thinking. It didn't affect the work that she's still able to do for an organization. So accommodations, just making those accommodations for a person. And when I explained that to him, the light bulb went off that, hey, it isn't about us versus them. DEI actually affects me too, right? And his son also had some kind of disease, I think, some sickness where he also needed accommodations. I think his son was having dialysis, needed accommodations too. So just in that person who was saying no to everything because he thought this meant that I'm going to have to hire unqualified people because of the color of their skin, he realized that no, all it means is that I am making sure that the best people, the people who are with me, can show up as their best selves. And if that best self is, I can't see, I need a computer that will help me, that has braille so I can do my work. I can't really hear, so I need accommodations for hearing, that those accommodations are made. So that's one of my favorite examples.
That is, I mean, that's remarkable. That's remarkable. And this topic that we're talking about is so remarkable. We're going to take a station break, but we're going to come back. We're going to pick it up. And we got a lot more to talk about. If you want to be part of the conversation, go to the comments, ask questions, and put it in the comments, and I'll make sure I get it on the screen, and we'll get you an answer real quick. It's Your Life. I'm Dr. James J.C. Cooley. We'll be back with more on racial shortly after the break.
You'll fight again. And if you want my opinion, I'll let it take me away. Only relief is the four on the floor and the crowd that
Noah Dingley here, producer of The James Cooley Show, It's Your Life. And the new audio version of James' book, Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet, is a must-have. James shares his true life story of struggle and success in America. It's both a cautionary tale and a roadmap to achieving the American dream. Get the new audio version of Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet by James Cooley on Amazon.com or wherever audiobooks are sold.
Life is a series of circles and cycles, crazes and stages. These experiences teach you the lessons of life. You can either ignore them or embrace them. Welcome to It's Your Life with James Cooley. James is a motivational speaker, author, military veteran, and founder of the J.C. Cooley Foundation. James is here to equip you to strive for greatness and overcome adversity. It's time to get you equipped today for the challenges of tomorrow. Now, here's the host of It's Your Life, James Cooley.
It's your life.
Hello, welcome back to the James Cooley Show. It's Your Life, and we got Rachel here. And I told you, I was expert in a lot of different topics. And as you see, and I'm looking at the comments. Oh, absolutely, she's outstanding in everything that she do. And if you want to be part of this conversation, just put your comments in. I'll put them up on the screen, and Rachel will get you an answer. Rachel, so we were talking about accommodations, that we have to make accommodations and what companies need to do, because diversity, equity, inclusion, everyone have to be included. Everyone should be treated fairly. And you're going to have diversity in everything you do. That's what makes us different. But that does not make us in a way where we don't belong. And a lot of times when you have issues like that in an organization, a company, a school, or whatever, that creates mental health problems among some of the workers, because they feel like they are not a part of this. And a lot of people feel that I have to stick around because I have to have a job. And I just hate going to work every day because I leave there feeling crazy. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. Mental health problems, there are so many things that can affect a person's quality of life. When people feel like they don't have any options, they have a job, it's a toxic work environment, and they keep going, it can end up in people having health issues, or even the mental health problems. And that's not good for the organization ultimately, because that means that person is not bringing their best selves to work. The ultimate goal for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is that Rachel is able to bring her best self and her whole self to work. If I'm able to do those things, I'm able to be the most productive person that I could be for the organization. That will lead to reduced employee turnover rate for an organization. There is a large dollar amount attached to high turnover rates. It takes a lot of money to hire a person. And when you keep having high turnover rates, that's not good for the bottom line of the organization. It also leads to higher innovation. If I'm able to bring my best self and my whole self to work, if I feel safe, it leads to better employee engagement. And on the positive side for organizations, there in the United States, we have the EEOC, right? Where anybody can go and report if there's an inequity that happens at work. There's sexual harassment, there's different laws that are in the land in America to protect people within their jobs, how I show up at job and how my job treats me. But ultimately, from the organizational perspective for the CEO, it minimizes lawsuits, right? You don't want those lawsuits. And going back to what you said about accommodations, Target actually was sued for not, there was a recruiter. Target is an equal, employment, the equal employment opportunities for everyone. So this was the recruiting process, and this was a recruiter who hadn't been adequately trained, and it was someone who was hearing impaired and needed an extra step for the interview. And instead of accommodating that person, that recruiter just never got back to that person. Well, that person followed up and sued, and Target, it was a big deal. It was all over. So all over the news. So you don't want to end up in a situation where you're breaking the law and you can be sued. So it's important not only that you have policies and procedures in place that protect people, that allow for those accommodations that we're talking about. It's important that everybody within the organization knows and understands as well.
Wow. So we talk about a lot of things that dealing with diversity, equity, and inclusion, but there are a whole lot of myth out there. Can you discuss some of the most common myths about diversity, equity, and inclusion that are out there?
The biggest myth that I found is that diversity, equity, and inclusion will make sure that we end up with people who aren't qualified in their roles, right? So DEI means that I'm going to hire an unqualified person to come and be in that role. And that is false. That assumes that people who are not white don't have the education. That assumes that they haven't worked and don't have the experience. So that's one of the biggest myths that I think that I find, is that it will mean that we have a pool of unqualified people working for us.
A lot of things that I have dealt with personally is this thing we call unconscious bias, right? Unconscious bias, meaning that some people, they probably not really thinking about what they're saying. Case in point, somebody approached me one day, and I was giving this presentation or something, and he came up and said, "You know what? You're not like the rest of them." I said, "What? You're not like the rest of them." I said, the rest of who? Many other black guys. I said, "What?" Now to that person, they didn't think that they was saying anything wrong because it was unconscious to them. Can you explain what unconscious bias is and give us some examples of it?
Absolutely. Unconscious bias is verbal or nonverbal slights. It's when you assume something about a person when you know nothing about that person. So, for example, you're a veteran, right?
Mhm.
An unconscious bias that I can have of you is that, because a lot of times you hear about PTSD when it comes to veterans, right? Like, oh, JC has PTSD. That is an unconscious bias that I have. I know nothing about you or your life. The only thing that I know is that you're a veteran, and I automatically bring a random fact that has nothing to do with you and attach it with you. And I say, well, I definitely don't want to hire someone with PTSD to work for me because I don't know what he would do. So it's when you make a judgment call about a person without the facts.
Wow. Rachel, isn't it another example, I would say, of unconscious bias? If, let's say, if a woman who has a family, children, is on a job interview, and the person just assumes she has small children, that maybe, she can't handle the responsibility that position demands. Is that another example of unconscious bias?
That is another example that we see a lot in corporate America, or you have a woman who's just had a child and her role requires for her to travel, and you just don't even ask her to travel because you just assume that she can't because she's got young kids. You don't give her that opportunity. Well, she has kids at home. You don't know what her situation is, and it's unfair to not even offer her the option to travel because you've just assumed that, hey, she definitely can't do it because she just had kids.
Well, how does DEI address unconscious bias? Because probably a lot of people don't even realize they do have unconscious biases. So how do they, I would say, train or just make them to have some sense of self-awareness that this is going on?
It begins with education, right? You begin by educating people on what's appropriate and what's not appropriate to say. So I could have a thought about you, Michelle, but it doesn't mean that because I have that thought, that it's the truth. And I should be slow to make judgment on you, on whatever the situation is, because I don't know what facts are. So education is important, making sure that you offer people the same opportunities no matter what. So in that situation that you were talking about, Michelle, if let's say Rachel is up in line for that job that has travel, as JC is as well, offer it to both of them. Or don't overlook Rachel for JC. Let Rachel say, at this time I would rather not because I just had my child. Could we consider this later on for me? But don't overlook me and just go to JC because you assume that JC will be able to travel. JC might have young kids at home too and doesn't want to travel. Just because he's a man doesn't mean that he's okay with being away from his kids for, 50% of the time. So don't make that judgment call. Make sure that you present the same options to people. So education, right? Empathy. Empathy is also very key. Before you open your mouth and speak, think, how would I feel if this was being said to me? How would I feel if this situation was presented to me? Because it goes back to that othering, right?
Absolutely. This is so interesting. And we got to take another break because I don't want to start talking about microaggressions and then we have to cut it off immediately. But when we come back, that's what we're going to talk about. And we're going to talk about a lot more things. If you want to be part of the conversation, all you have to do is just go to the comments and ask this great guest any questions that you would like. I promise you we'll get you an answer. And I tell you what, it's your life. I'm Dr. James J.C. Cooley. We'll see you shortly after the break.
Guess what's happened to the freshmen and the sophomores? You guys are going to grow up and be the seniors. You guys are going to run your school. So, this is the Warriors, right? This is the Warriors, right? The Warriors! If you tell yourself you're going to do something, you got to do it. So you commit. And that last, create, collaborate, commit with what? Commit with what? We commit with So the 4 C's is create, collaborate, commit. We're talking, everybody say it with me. Create, collaborate, commit. With what? Thank you, thank you. Let's go ahead and proceed. Another round of applause.
Hello, welcome back to the James Cooley Show, and my great guest here, Rachel, is really educating us. And as you see, I mean, every time she talk about any one of these potential topics as related to diversity, equity, inclusion, expert, I think that we need a higher word than that, you know, because she's an educator and she really knows these topics. And if you want to be part of the conversation, you still got a chance. We got the better part of 9 minutes, 9.5 minutes. So you can still jump into the conversation. You know, so Rachel, I want to talk about microaggression and exactly what that is and how does that relate to inequities. You know, so first of all, can you tell our viewers and our listeners what is microaggression as it relates to DEI?
You actually mentioned a microaggression earlier on when you said someone said to you, "You're not like them." That's a microaggression. It's like a backhanded compliment, but is it a compliment? Because who is them? Do you mean Black people? Well, I'm Black. Am I supposed to be happy or am I supposed to be mad? Am I supposed to be upset with that comment? So a microaggression is an everyday verbal or nonverbal behavior or slight, snub, insult, intentional or unintentional, which communicates hostility or a derogatory negative comment targeted at someone from a marginalized group. So a microaggression could be a microaggression against a person for their sexual orientation, for their abilities or disabilities, religion, race is the most obvious. There could be a microaggression said towards someone for their socioeconomic status. And like I said, remember when George Floyd passed away, I was so upset. Murdered. He was murdered. I'll say the right thing. He was murdered. And I remember some friends of mine, well-meaning friends of mine, saying to me, well, don't be so upset because that would never happen to you and that would never happen to your son because you're different, right? That's a microaggression. Micro, macro, no, because you are talking about something that I am, that I cannot change. I can't change the color of my skin. I was born that way. It's my identity. So microaggressions a lot of times are slights against something that a person cannot change. You can't change your identity. You can't change where you were born, you know, those things. You can't change whether you have a disability. That lady I was telling you about can't change the fact that she can't see. She's losing her eyesight.
So you mentioned micro. Can you explain the difference between micro inequities as it relate to micro aggression?
So a micro iniquity would be a small behavior or an action against, again, a person or a marginalized group. So for example, we could be in a room in a meeting and you walk in, JC, or I walk in. Let me flip it because we always want to talk about men doing it to women. And I give every single woman eye contact and I don't give you eye contact. That's a micro iniquity. You know what I mean?
Oh,
That's a slight. That's a slight at you where I talk at you, but I'm looking through you and past you. So it's, or even, for example, like if I say, if you say, trying to think of something, my name is Angelina, and I say, oh, Angelina, and you say, no, please pronounce my name Angelina. It's pronounced Angelina. Okay, Angelina. That's a micro iniquity. It's like if someone says, hey, this is how you say this, and I keep saying it wrong. Or another example of a micro iniquity would be like, what? You're black? Well, you don't even look black. You look so white. Yeah, but I'm black. You know what I mean? Like, stop calling me something that I'm not. So it's just that slight, that dig at an individual that minimizes a person. It minimizes a person's experience.
Wow. So we done covered a lot of this stuff. I want to cover, I know you talked about some of the benefits of an organization or company for using best practices and as relate to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Let's talk about a few more of those. What's some of the benefits, how it's going to help support that company? I know you mentioned a lot about reduced turnover and other things, but it's a lot more. And case in point, making everybody feel like they're part of this organization. Profits, company profits goes up because everybody just walks in and they feel like, hey, I'm part of this, and they want to do their jobs. And get rid of pushing aside where you don't want to say anything at a meeting because your voice is not going to be heard. At least that's what you think, and that's how the company make you feel. You talked about something that was major, and I see this happening in a lot of companies, where you got a turnover rate. I know there's one particular company. I mean, every time that I go in there, the front desk is, I'm like, what happened to all of them quit? This done happened like 8 times this year already.
Right.
It's something that the company is not doing, and they don't understand the problems. Faster problem solving when everybody feel included. You got any that you want to add? Because reason I'm saying this because we only got like 2 minutes left, and this topic is so wonderful that we'll have to pick it up again with another hour whenever you have opportunity.
But quickly, diversity is the point at which things differ. So a variety of different perspectives is very, very beneficial to any organization, and ultimately benefits the bottom line. Give you an example, a quick example. American Express some years ago started a women's affinity group. That's another way of helping address unconscious bias within workplaces. If you allow different groups of people to get together and meet where they can voice some of the things that they're experiencing at the company. So they created a women's affinity group. That women's affinity group was able to come up with a marketing strategy. Remember, what is diversity? Diversity is the point at which things differ, right? And they were able to guide American Express's marketing strategy to where women said, hey, you're marketing at men, but the people who pay the bills in the household and spend the money is the women. We need to market at women. So a few years ago, I would say maybe 10, 15 years ago, you will see American Express started to shift and market towards women. And that actually helped increase their bottom line and help with their sales. So that's an example of, an advantage of diversity. When you allow diversity of thought, when you allow different perspectives, it will ultimately help your bottom line. How did I do?
You did absolutely wonderful.
I know I talk a lot. So
you did absolutely wonderful. But I want you to tell the audience and potential people that want to hire you to come in and do work for them, how can they get in touch with you? Because I think you're fantastic. I've been knowing that anyway. That's why I invited you on to talk about this topic today. So how could they get in touch with you if they want to enlist your services or just want to find out more about the diversity, equity, inclusion, and some of the other things. So you got 30 seconds.
On my LinkedIn page, Rudo Munyaradzi on LinkedIn, and also my website, Rachel, RACHELRUDO.com, and via email, Rachel@rachelrudo.com.
Rachel, thank you so much for coming on the show. You know you got to come back. Got to come back.
Absolutely.
And this was absolutely fantastic. And I tell you what, I hope everybody was listening to that education that she just gave us all. I want everybody to always dream big, think big, and be big. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. It's Your Life. I'm Dr. James J.C. Cooley.